On this edition of the program, Andrew Cuomo's pathetic attempt to stay on the stage. Emily Jashinsky of the After Party joins to talk about so many things. And the Recissions Package. Benjamin Netanyahu's government might be falling apart, and so much more. It's all coming up.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program for July 16th, 2025. Your old pal, Justin Robert Young, joining you not from Austin, Texas, from Orlando, Florida. I'm here on a very brief, quick stopover for family stuff. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, over my shoulder, there's a picture of my college diploma. I'm in my mom's office right now, so it is festooned with pictures of me and my niece and nephew, my brother. It's a good time. But we are not here to talk about that. We are here to talk about everything that is going on in the world of politics. And so Recissions Package, big deal. That is coming up. Will it pass? I think it will. We'll go to that in the update. Benjamin Netanyahu's government may well be falling apart. And probably this is the biggest thing. Inflation. Ticked up a little bit month by month. There's some copium from the America First people that this isn't necessarily tariffs. I think it's complicated. We'll get into that in a bit. Also, Emily Jashinsky of the After Party. I talked about this with her. I heard her on Mark Halperin's podcast. They put an episode of her podcast in his feed. And immediately I'm like, oh my God, this lady's got to come on the show. And she did. And it was great. And you're going to hear all that. Before we do, I need to play this for you.
Hello, I'm Andrew Cuomo. And unless you've been living under a rock, you probably know that the Democratic primary did not go the way I had hoped. To the 440,000 New Yorkers who voted for me, a sincere thank you. Thank you for believing in me, in my agenda, and in my experience. And I am truly sorry that I let you down. But as my grandfather used to say, when you get knocked down, learn the lesson and pick yourself back up and get in the game. And that is what I'm going to do. The fight to save our city isn't over. Only 13% of New Yorkers voted in the June primary. The general election is in November, and I am in it to win it. My opponent, Mr. Mamdani, offers slick slogans, but no real solutions. We need a city with lower rent, safer streets, where buying your first home is once again possible, where childcare won't bankrupt you. That's the New York City we know. That's the one that is still possible. You haven't given up on it, and you deserve a mayor with the experience and ideas to make it happen again, and the guts to take on anyone who stands in the way. Every day I'm going to be hitting the streets, meeting you where you are, to hear the good and the bad, problems and solutions. Because for the next few months, it's my responsibility to earn your vote. So let's do this. I'll see you out there.
That is Andrew Cuomo. He is still around. Despite the fact that he blew a 60-point lead to lose to Zohran Mamdani in the Democratic primary, something that was on a silver platter for him. He had nothing but tens of millions of dollars and name brand recognition that would prevent anybody from having any kind of a chance against him. He had such a lifeless, listless, and pointless campaign that he created a star. He's a star maker. Zohran Mamdani is going to be the next mayor of New York. So here's what you need to understand when you watch that. Number one, there is this totally fictitious idea in his head that he didn't already just have his best shot at winning. I don't care what the polls say. I don't care that he is polling above the Eric Adams, Curtis Sliwa camp. Doesn't matter. He had his shot. If he was ready to be mayor of New York City, he would have already been the presumptive mayor. This was not supposed to be an interesting race. There's a reason why I didn't go cover it, because it was not going to be an interesting race, and indeed it wasn't. Now, if you were going to reboot your campaign, and if indeed Andrew Cuomo was going to be somebody that was up out of his coma, and he was going to be a part of this race, then what you need is something concrete. Something that you are going to do that Zohran Mamdani is not going to do. You need to go to a place that he will not. I would say, number one, I'm going to safeguard Jews in New York City. If I were him, I would have done that entire ad in a synagogue. I would have had a bunch of Jews slowly shaking their heads saying, I'll tell you, I'm worried. I'm worried for me. I'm worried for my family. I'm worried for what's going to happen to this city. Half my friends are already in Palm Beach. And to be totally honest, my fingers have a cramp from looking up the Zillow listings because I'm afraid of what's going to happen. Generations of my family have been raised here in New York City. And I think it's time to finally go because of what I fear is coming. That is the most uncomfortable place that Zohran Mamdani can go. It is at the heart of his rift with Kathy Hochul. It is at the heart of his rift with Hakeem Jeffries. It is at the heart of his rift with the Democratic Party. Exploit it. Look, this is not a friendly game. You want to win? You want to dirty up your opponent? That's how you do it. You play along with safety. You play along with government solvency. You say, look, he's gonna bankrupt this city. A vote, you tie him to Bill de Blasio. Bill de Blasio, very excited about Zohran Mamdani. You say, look, this is a nice kid, but he's an actor, he's a rapper, and essentially he's just a front for de Blasio. Do you want another de Blasio term? Vote for Zohran Mamdani. That's how you go after him. But what does Cuomo do? Literally just a very sad impersonation of Zohran. What Zohran did in his race was to go to various places in New York City and ask people what mattered the most to them. What was it? Affordability. So Zohran ran on affordability. What is Cuomo running on now? Affordability. Now, people can make fun of Mamdani for his solutions. I want to make buses free. I want to do government-run grocery stores, blah, 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 blah. Progressives love them. Centrists are skeptical. Conservatives think that they are absolutely the most ridiculous ideas on the planet. But you want to know what they are? Solutions. Name one solution that you heard during that Cuomo ad. Nothing. Zip. Zero. Zilch. Nada. This is an idea-free reboot. So essentially what he is running on is my name is Andrew Cuomo. And without a doubt, there's about 20% of New Yorkers that will just vote for the Cuomo because they like Cuomos. They like Mario. They like Andrew. They like Chris. They're just into Cuomos. They're Cuomosexuals. I want to wrap this up by pointing out something that I do think is important, because every once in a while, especially when we're talking about insurgent candidates on the progressive side, on the right side, we talk a lot about stop candidate movements. Why they happen, why they don't happen. They don't happen because ego gets in the way. And they usually don't happen because of that reason. It was unique that Bernie was stopped in 2020 by way of the centrist candidates, that they formed the centrist Voltron to benefit Joe Biden. That's rare. Usually what happens is what you're seeing right now. Eric Adams, Pig-headed. He ain't dropping out. He's the mayor of New York City. He's the incumbent mayor. Why would he drop out? Cuomo he still thinks he's slumming it by running for mayor, doing you a favor. You're welcome. And then Curtis Sliwa, who is, look, he's Curtis Sliwa. He's the Republican. In my head, I used to joke that, wait, you're telling me the New York Republicans can't find one rich hedge fund guy to be their standard bearer? You can't find one? I think that guy would be the consensus candidate. I think you'd have the best chance for a Republican mayor of New York City if he was just a pro-choice liberal Republican. But of course, here's the big secret. The reason why Hakeem Jeffries is nervous about Zohran Mamdani is because Mike Johnson is so pumped about Zohran Mamdani. Donald Trump is so pumped about Zohran Mamdani because that means when Zohran wins, they are going to pray and pray on his downfall, and they will do everything that they can to make New York look like a total cesspit, a hellhole, because they want to run against socialism in the midterms. A lot of pressure. But here's what we do know right now. The Stop Zohran movement, not happening. This is your update, brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. That's where you need to go if you want to get 2 bonus episodes of this show, no matter what, rain or shine. Even if we don't do 2 free episodes, we always get the bonus. To the bonus people, thank you to everybody who has done such. Head on over there right now. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Inflation ticked up in June with the consumer price index rising 0.3 and core CPI up 0.2 year over year. CPI hit a 2.7%, raising concerns that Trump's proposed August 1 tariffs could reignite price pressures. But it was gasoline that led the monthly increase, up 1%, while clothing also rose, potentially an early sign of tariff effects. However, new and used car prices continued to decline. Economists warn that inflation could climb further once businesses exhaust pre-tariff inventories. The White House is pressuring the Fed to cut interest rates, but Chair Jerome Powell is holding steady to assess long-term impacts before acting. And this is something else that we need to pay attention to. So, did diddly on my flight over, looking at the news here. The America First people will be very quick to tell you this was not a rise in imports that drove the inflation here. So if you're saying that this is tariffs, they will tell you, no. That's not the case. We did not see an inflation in imports. The reason why this is slightly higher and in line with what economists were expecting is because fuel has gone up. Okay. So again, not an economist, although we will have one with a great conversation on Friday. But I do track political promises, and I track how ideas are and are not playing out in the public sphere. The promise from the pro-tariff crowd, the promise from the White House has always been, yes, tariffs will cost more for things coming in, but they will not affect your price when you buy things for the following reasons. We are going to make it cheaper for American businesses to do business in this country. Chief among them, energy. That's A1. We're going to keep gas cheap. We're going to make gas cheap. And when gas is cheap, shipping is cheap. And when shipping is cheap, then you are able to afford to slide the knobs a little differently on the rest of your ledger. So let's say it's a little bit more expensive to bring stuff in from overseas. Let's say it's 10%, 30% more expensive to bring stuff in from overseas. If you are consistently facing a lower regulatory environment and more specifically cheap gas, then you will be able to make sure that your price to the consumer is still where it needs to be, that it's not out of the ordinary. That's a cool promise, as long as gas is cheap. Gas was not cheap last month, which demonstrates that this kind of has to go exactly right for it to play out the way that the White House wants it to. And let's remember, the only thing that matters is the economy. Senate Majority Leader John Thune is beginning procedural votes, as he did yesterday, on the White House's $9.4 billion rescissions package. It's unclear if there are enough to proceed. However, GOP senators are demanding more details, particularly on proposed cuts to global health and food aid. Amendments are likely needed for Senate passage, prompting concerns that the House might not pass it when it comes back. The vote-a-rama is expected today on Wednesday, with final Senate and House votes possibly on Thursday. But the clock is ticking. If Congress does not act on the rescissions by Friday, the administration must spend the money as it was originally appropriated. The rescissions package is the output of Doge. So Doge went in, Doge looked at the books, Doge said that there was money that could be cut. This is $9.8 billion of it. I have said with a straight face that there are only a few things in the world where you can hand wave away $9.8 billion. But I will say that this is one of them. $9.8 billion is only a fraction of the budget that the American government pays. It will not bring us anywhere near close to balancing our books. The argument for this is that, you want to know what? We got to build the muscle of not spending as much money. And this is us building the muscle. Can you do the hard things? Reforming entitlements, cutting the Pentagon's budget, if you do not do things that are smaller. Now, the controversial part here is foreign aid, specifically PEPFAR. That is an HIV and AIDS reduction program in Africa, long touted as one of George W. Bush's signature accomplishments and one of the most bipartisan things that George W. Bush ever did. And then NPR funding, the Center for Public Broadcasting, which helps fund public broadcasting throughout the country. Elmo picked a hell of a time to go on a tirade on Sunday. Google that one if you want. I think this is going to pass. Trump is putting a lot of weight behind it. What it looks like by the time it gets back to the House, that's the big question. My prediction, the House is going to get jammed again, and we're going to see exactly how far Trump's power goes, because the House, maybe the House's spirit is broken. Maybe the Senate can do whatever they want and the House will just pass it as long as Trump is looking for it. But if the Republican Party wants to signal, especially after the One Big Beautiful Bill, that they are serious on some level about bending the debt curve, you kind of have to do this. And finally, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government faces a significant challenge as an ultra-Orthodox party, United Torah Judaism, announced its departure due to disagreements over a proposed law ending military exemption for religious students. This move, coupled with the potential departures from other parties, could lead to a minority government and complicate the ongoing ceasefire talks with Hamas. Netanyahu's immediate rule is not threatened, but the political shakeups could pave the way for early elections. I'm not a Knesset head. I'm not going to be here to tell you that I know exactly what's going on. But I told you when the Iran stuff happened, we were over the mountain for Bibi. Bibi had achieved the thing that nobody thought he could achieve. Eventually, you are going to lose steam. Beside the fact that this fight locally had been brewing for a little while. That's your update. TakePoliticsSeriously.com is where you need to go if you want to support this show. And now, the great Emily Jashinsky. You know, it's a rare and fun thing in the world of podcasts that every once in a while you listen to a podcast and like many people, you have a desire to be friends with that person. But when you have your own podcast, you can invite them on your show and you can talk to them. And that's what we've done here with Emily Jashinsky of The After Party. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. That's such a nice thing to say. I feel the same. It's like half the benefit of having a podcast. You're like, that person is so interesting. Oh, I guess I can just talk to them.
I can just submit a ticket and it's like a deli. Like then all of a sudden you just get a conversation, which is fun. So everybody go subscribe to The After Party. You've had a tremendous launch of this new program. Tell everybody about it.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that. It's been super gratifying. We're live actually on Mondays and Wednesdays. So we wanted to do something a little bit different in the podcasting world. There are some live podcasts. Megyn Kelly's podcast itself is live, but we wanted to do something live late at night. Firstly, these news cycles are absolutely crazy and sometimes go into the wee hours of the morning. But secondly, it just, you can kind of, you feel like you have a grasp somewhat on the contours of the last day's news cycle and then going into the next day's news cycle, and you can kind of try to grapple with the big picture questions and have a little fun doing it. So that's our goal at After Party.
I think that you've already carved out a really great niche. It is a fun, relatable program and right of center for folks. It's on the MK network, which is in and of itself blooming in many different directions. But I think you've done a great job. And you started off with Tucker Carlson during the end of the 12-day war, which, I mean, I don't know. I mean, aside from booking Elmo now, I can't think of a better guest.
No, it was crazy. And he had been booked a couple of days before, actually. And we were already like, this is amazing timing. And then as these news cycles go, it was just a couple of hours before we had Tucker on that it looked like a ceasefire had been reached. So to have him, somebody who's really pretty connected in Trump world, come on, give his thoughts, what he knew. And
apocalyptic about what would happen if what happened.
Of course, that was the first question is, were you wrong, Tucker?
Yeah.
And, he had been saying over the weekend, I hope I'm wrong. So it wasn't a hugely bitter pill for him to swallow, but he had to confront that question. Yeah.
That it wasn't as horrifying as he had laid out. Well, let me ask you this, because I've appreciated listening to your show, your perspective. What do you think is the number one story right now in the world of politics?
You know, it's so interesting you asked me that because I was thinking about it just this morning. I was reading a lot of the DC newsletters. The Political Playbook, for example, this morning decided to lead with the Jeffrey Epstein news. And this is very strange for me as someone who has been frustrated with the lack of media coverage on Jeffrey Epstein over the last decade or so. Because it's now the Trump angle is fascinating. The hypocrisy on its face is obvious. All of that is true. That is not the number one story for most Americans. Americans care about it, but to suddenly start leading with it and leaning into this drama, I don't think reflects the priorities of the American people. I think probably the number one story right now is the economy and tariffs as they're hanging in the balance. There's now a new deadline, and the administration said that they're supposed to be getting all these deals and before August 1st. So there's several weeks to go on that. And they passed the big, beautiful bill, which means all of this investment is supposed to be happening. And that's affecting whether people have jobs, what kind of jobs they have. That to me is probably the number one story when people are sitting down at their kitchen table.
And you're right. And I don't know why. I mean, I asked you that you answered correctly, but also you mentioned two things that I need to go back to. Number one, what the hell happened to the Political Playbook? Like, that has fallen off a cliff, and this is going to be super inside DC, but it's not well written. It's not particularly well sourced. Like, maybe it's a rebuilding period for them. But I don't. That's not just me, right? It is a markedly worse product than it was like 2 years ago.
Yeah, there's a lot of chatter about that in DC. I think many people feel similarly. The obvious answer is that a Brit is writing it now, which I think genuinely he seems nice. I actually have never met Jack Blanchard, but it's such an inside baseball newsletter that somebody who's kind of outside of that world it's hard to speak the language that you need to nail Playbook. At the same time, I think maybe even a bigger issue for Playbook is that Nancy Pelosi is no longer really in power, and Mitch McConnell is no longer really in power, and that was a ton of their sourcing, genuinely. Yeah. So I think they actually, in this new world, you actually see people frustrated here that Mike Johnson gives them anything at all, and that Mike Johnson talks to Punch Bowl with Jake Sherman and Anna Palmer. So I think their sourcing has sort of shriveled up, to be honest.
It is amazing. I've been thinking a lot about sourcing because I'm now possibly to the end of the run of books that were written about the 2024 election. I love this genre of nonfiction. I like reading them, and I like kind of putting the pieces together, because when you read enough of them, if you're psychotic enough like me to read enough of them, some people go on the record with certain things that they say that are just kind of sourced in another book, and you start to piece together of like, oh, a lot of fight was Ron Klain. And because he went on the record in Original Sin and said all the same stuff that was described in Fight. But it's kind of crazy to think that there is an entire journalistic industry that is built on top of like 7 people gossiping on a group text.
So that's really funny, because I haven't actually read those full books yet, but I bet when you then look back at the media coverage, you can very easily start to pin the sources. It's Ron Klain, or it's Karine Jean-Pierre, who's really tipping her hat now that she didn't know much, that she was aggrieved and would have had a lot of reason to talk to the press. I mean, that's probably a very interesting thing to do. And you can do that. I mean, there's a sort of running joke about being able to recognize when a background quote is Tucker Carlson, or somebody like a background quote from someone familiar with Trump, because you also can just figure out the way people speak. And you're like, okay, well, I know who said that. And it was Kevin McCarthy or something.
Let me ask you this. One of the things that has been different between this version of the Trump administration and the last version is that there's been a lot of things that are dishy and gossipy about the Trump administration over the last month and a half. And the Epstein thing is certainly part of it. What we haven't had is what we had nearly every day in Trump 1, which is like Maggie Haberman in the New York Times telling us everything that everyone thinks, and the back and forth of this person said this and this person said that, and this is where the state of play is. It does feel like even in chaos, some things have leaked out, but it's mostly been on the right. It's like Steve Bannon saying, hey, Elon and Scott Bessent got into a fist fight. It's not the places that talked about it in the first term.
No, it's a great point. And in this case, I think the simplest explanation that's been reported is the correct one, which is that Susie Wiles learned from watching how chiefs of staff managed Trump in the first administration. And often what was happening is those managers were playing the different factions off of each other in the press in this very Machiavellian, cynical, and disloyal way, to be honest. Like, it was, they thought they were doing what was in the interest of the administration, but oftentimes that meant leaking private details of conversations with the president to try to sabotage what the president wanted, because they were treating him like a first grader who needed to be talked to through the press in order to understand that he was making a bad decision per John Kelly's perspective or whatever. So I think Susie Wiles is generally running a very, very tight ship with the information that gets to the president and with the people who get to meet with the president. And, you know, I think they have just conveyed to staff how seriously they take leaking, and that it's not like a wink, wink, nod, nod type thing. It's actually like, this will get your ass fired.
Why do you think that? I mean, because look, all praise to Susie Wiles. She does seem to have done the impossible. She didn't get fired during a Trump campaign, which was heretofore unseen. And now it does appear that she has about as mechanical of a run of a Trump administration as one could ever assume when Donald Trump is the president. But I almost feel like that's this level of buttoning up is almost impossible unless everybody understands it. And I almost just wonder whether or not there is now just no fight within the Republican Party. It's been totally remade on this new coalition. And no matter what, everybody, if all power is future power, as we often say on this show, then they know that they don't want to piss off Trump. They don't want to be on the wrong end of a Truth Social that torpedoes their career with that coalition. Is this just that everybody who would leak and wants to continue working in Republican politics understands that they can't run afoul of not only Trump, but his coalition?
Yeah, I think, yes. I think it's a little bit of that. I think it's also a little bit that people now have realized their ideology is Trumpism. And they sort of, we've seen this in the last few days. Actually, we've seen this between Iran and Jeffrey Epstein a lot over the last couple of weeks, because people have repeatedly gone with the phrase, I trust the president, trust Trump. Maybe I think this seems a little odd, but because he did it, I trust that it's the right thing to do. So there's generally also just like a lot more cohesion. There's a fear of getting on the wrong side of Trump. That's definitely true. And then there's also, on top of all of that, agreement on policy. People have changed their minds on a lot of like tariffs, for example. You see a lot more Republicans in Congress who are willing to go along with that because they've had a change of mind. Marco Rubio is somebody who's sincerely changed his mind on some of this stuff. And the last thing I just want to say that proves your theory, I think true in real time, is that as soon as there was staunch disagreement over what was happening with the Epstein case, what happened? Well, we saw those 1.0 style leaks about Dan Bongino playing out on Friday because there was this actual disagreement. And it wasn't at the White House. It was probably a lot of people coming from FBI Bongino world.
And also first through Loomer. So,
so I was hearing, without saying it, like, there was stuff that Susie Wiles wouldn't have been able to control, basically. That was coming out outside of her purview. And it was because there were real disagreements. And so I think that proves the theory that you were getting at, which is people are sort of on board.
It's kind of crazy because it feels just as weird that people have fallen in line as it did that there was this seemingly forever fight in the Republican side, that it feels like the Democrats are going through now. The only difference is that they clearly have coalitional problems, but they don't have a person. There's nobody. So if right now it's like, okay, it's Trump, I trust Trump. And that means I'm anti-war unless we bomb Iran and then we don't fight anymore. So I'm for one unit of war and that's it. And then we're done. And also I'm for free trade, but mostly free trade that comes with saying you're not for free trade, but then being for free trade, maybe. And also I'm for transparency unless Trump thinks that we don't need to be transparent, because I'm sure he has good reasons, which is idiosyncratic and ridiculous. And obviously we've wrapped our entire media around it. But on the other side, you've got big issues on the Democratic side, and there's no one person that is standing up and saying, this is where we're going. We're going here now, except for maybe, Bernie's probably the closest thing to it, right? Can you name anybody else that is even, in that league?
No, nobody's in that league. That's a good way to put it, because there are a lot of people that are jockeying to be in that league, but they're not in a position at all until after you would go through like a primary process or something to that degree. Bernie is now, and this is to the chagrin of the establishment Democrats that tried to push him down so many times. They ended up losing with Kamala Harris and now have no major figure that speaks to such a wide swath of Democratic voters outside of Bernie Sanders and maybe Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who took it upon themselves to do this fighting oligarchy tour, I think mostly as a strategy to prove to national Democrats that what mobilizes the base is, quote unquote, fighting oligarchy. It's not whatever the hell Kamala Harris was doing. And so Bernie is the one who's in that position. This is dangerous and exciting for Democrats. It reminds me a lot of what happened after Mitt Romney lost the 2012 election. There were Ted Cruz figures and Scott Walker figures trying to rise above the rest of the pack. And Donald Trump ended up swooping in and consolidating enough of the Republican Party that none of those people could compete. So there's room for something very interesting. I mean, you could end up seeing like a Ruben Gallego or an Andy Beshear, one of these interesting sort of red state Democrats come out and end up being powerful. Or you could see something that Democrats have wanted to sort of keep the toothpaste in the tube and ends up coming out and they can't stuff it back in.
Yeah. Yeah. And that would be a more full-throated, progressive, burn it down kind of voice. The only thing is that Trump, for folks who were following, a lot of his false start candidacies, he was on Fox News talking about things that people were into all the time. He was writing political books that nobody read all the time because he wanted to establish himself in this space. He was finding, he didn't wake up one day and say, oh, immigration's my thing. He'd been talking about immigration for a little bit because he knew that when he talked about immigration, people reacted to him on Twitter and he got more of a reaction to it. So the only thing that I would say for the Democrats is swing harder. From a totally removed perspective, you don't have to do anything. You're out of power. Promise the craziest thing that you can think to promise, get everybody's hair on fire and go forward, because that's what Trump did. Trump came out and said, look, I'm going to build a wall. I'm going to Mexico pay for it.
Yep.
Just nonsense. I mean, certainly it was to the right of where we thought politics were going to go in terms of immigration. Really, my critique to the Democrats now is dream bigger. Why are you just kind of repeating these reflexive lines of just everything that Trump does? I'm against it. No, come up with the thing yourself, because that's what sunk Kamala, was that nobody knew what she was for, even if they were excited about her.
Well, yeah, and two things to add to that. One, Trump was both more right-wing and dragged the party more right-wing than a lot of people thought, but also a little bit more left-wing when he was on the campaign trail saying everybody's going to have healthcare and we're going to have fair trade policies and we're going to stop wars. So there's room for a Democrat who's willing, and a left-wing Democrat. And Bernie is such a good example of somebody who could do this. And he's refrained from doing it, I think, disappointingly. He could go all in on his old immigration policies, and he could do it from the most progressive, compassionate position. But they don't want to give that, obviously, to Trump after these last 10 years. The other thing I would say that Democrats have not been doing, which they should definitely be doing, is criticizing Democrats. This is the single most powerful currency they have. And in the last week, we have seen some of the quote unquote podcast bros talk about how they would support a Zoran Mamdani. Why? Because he hates Democrats. Most Democratic voters, you can look at the polling now, they hate Democrats. So when you're wondering where your Joe Rogan is and you're trying to have a DNC sponsored talk show on YouTube, the only way to make these things successful is to be critical of Democrats. Joe Rogan was fundamentally a Democrat, critical of Democrats. People saw Donald Trump as a Democrat who was critical of Democrats. Yeah. It's just what people want to hear right now. And this is purely political and cynical. You don't even have to believe it. That's what's so unbelievably stupid that Democrats are doing, is they don't even know that they can lie about how bad the Democratic Party is. That's how bad they are right now. Their ticket to power is just going all in on Democratic Party corruption. And they still haven't even picked up on that.
The funniest thing about the Rogan stuff is that the thing that radicalized Rogan was the mainstream media wrapping around stories about him being racist and him looking at CNN and saying, wait a minute, if that's how they can make me out to be, and I publish literally every conversation I have, then what's happening to things that are more opaque? The opposition shop that put that out was Midas Touch. And now they're among the biggest voices. They're the people that ran him out. Where's the Rogan? The Rogan you lost. You've now put these guys up at the top of your spear there.
And they'll never be as popular as Rogan. It's not the same powerhouse capacity, because they're just a niche, and they might be doing really well because everything is nichified now and we're out of monoculture and clustered. But Rogan is one of the dying breaths of monoculture. People really like him, and they don't have that because they're just progressives at the end of the day, and that's not the same thing.
Well, not even they're whatever, the voice of New York City fundraising for the Democratic causes.
Right.
And it's just its own ridiculous little ecosystem.
Right.
Oh man, I lost it. Mostly because I realized just now, because you said it, the thing that attracted me to have you on the show is because you had talked about the monoculture. This is my favorite hobby horse.
Oh, really?
My favorite
Okay, me
hobby
too.
horse is the shattering of the monoculture and how now everything is its own little shard of conversation. Really, the only thing that matters in the world is coalition building, literally, because now there's not one place that you can go to and reach everybody that you would need to win an election.
Right. And, it caught us by surprise. And I think actually a lot of people still haven't thought of things with this framing. For me, it was like a key that unlocked everything. Once you realized that CBS, NBC, ABC used to conduct themselves. The example I always use is Johnny Carson versus Stephen Colbert. Why was Johnny Carson the number one man in late night for years and years? Despite being, I shouldn't say despite, but because he talked plenty about politics, but he was apartisan. He was not partisan. And he was still really funny. Stephen Colbert, through most of Trump 1.0, was the top man in late night, despite being the most partisan and also the least funny. Like, he was openly not trying to do comedy during a lot of parts of his show. And that was because, exactly, he was trying to corner, and he successfully did, the market of resistance wine moms who would tune in night after night. And the advertisers knew exactly who they were going to. They knew that they would have a loyal audience. And he was pulling in maybe 2.5, 3 million people. Whereas with Johnny Carson, you're trying to get a much bigger swath of the public. And so we are just chasing, suddenly, like in the blink of an eye, that collapsed, but it happened really quietly. And I don't think we realized how it affected our culture until, maybe 5-10 years down the road.
I think part of that was just about the tubes. It was just that, Johnny Carson, when you watch Johnny Carson, you had 4 choices. And so he was the best of the 4 choices that were on television, 5 plus Fox, right? Then you have the process of celebrity. Like, do you want to see a famous person? A famous person is going to be on my television tonight? That's crazy. I need to go. And also I need to know how they interact with Johnny. Is it a good interview? Is it a bad interview? There's all this stuff kind of put in there. Stand-up comedy, music. He is the gatekeeper. You're going to see Johnny the gatekeeper, see who's going to be allowed on the top of Mount Olympus for culture. For everybody now, including Stephen Colbert, who went the politics route, but even Jimmy Fallon, who largely stayed apolitical, but has to do these little bits. They need to be active. They can't just sit back and say, look, a celebrity's going to be on. I bet you're wondering how they're going to react with me, because nobody cares. Celebrity is so oversaturated because, again, we don't have the same playing field anymore.
And the other major factor, I think, is called elite sorting, which is like a stupid political science term or socioeconomic term. But one of the things that's really changed, and it's been hard for people to realize, because I think, honestly, my parents' generation is maybe the last generation that really lived like this. And so they saw the difference happening, was that we now concentrate in pockets based on our education level and our affluence in ways that we didn't decades ago. And so those people who are writing the scripts over at Fallon, some of them are 20-somethings just trying to make it in New York City and voting for Zoran because they can't pay rent. But they're more affluent and educated than the blue collar people that were still voting for Cuomo. And they're writing their scripts in a way that is much narrower. They're making business decisions. I mean, that's what happened. And that's the bubble that popped in 2020 when people looked around and were like, well, what do you mean? To quote Zoran, queer liberation is defunding the police. Like, what does that mean? Why are we tearing down statues of abolitionists? Why is the media saying fiery but mostly peaceful? Well, there's a lot of people who went to Oberlin who work at CNN. So that's kind of what happened. And so when you combine that with the business model changing, it just shifted very, very quickly under the surface.
And we can pair that with elite overproduction, which is another one of my favorite phrases that I think very much explains about our moment. All right. I found the thought that I lost before. The fastest way, and I don't know why I said this last summer when Biden was refusing to drop out of the race. Somebody is going to be made a star amongst Democrats torching Joe Biden and the Biden family. And it is a strategy I called Jamie Comer Never Told a Lie. Be the Democrat that says, I'm all in on everything. Every Jamie Comer bank transfer, every shady art sell, every auto pen thing. And this is another insane story that came out over last night with the New York Times and Joe Biden apparently pre-spinning, certainly not suspiciously, his like pitch on the auto pen stuff. But it's like, this is a piñata made of power. Hit him as hard as you can. This is what Trump did with Bush. He looked at the Bush family and said, you guys are warmongering. You led the country astray. And what was he rewarded with? Adulation and love for which people will renounce their old views because it has made him so powerful. I do not understand why there is just not a strafing of criticism for Biden.
It's unbelievable. I mean, truly unbelievable, because I think maybe the best explanation is that so many people are implicated, that so many people went to bat for Biden, that the amount of people who could do that is it's a small sample size. So almost everybody was on the record saying like, well, he's getting older, but he's still better than Trump, or whatever they said, some version of that. And
this is my favorite thing. I want people to just ask everybody who said this line that Joe Biden is the most consequential one-term president in history, because that was the new thing that they had to say. I'm just curious. Is he still more important than Kennedy in the minds of every Democrat who said that?
It's beautiful. There's somebody who kind of knows that he should be doing this, and it's Gavin Newsom, and he can't fully do it because he is so held back. Because, he's interesting, right? Because he knows when he sat down famously now with Charlie Kirk and said, Dems got the sports stuff wrong, blah, blah, blah. He knows that people want authenticity. So they want someone to come out and say, I was wrong. But he cannot actually do it in a believable way and in a way that actually, so like if you saw Gavin Newsom come out and be like, man, this Biden stuff, we were so wrong. Let me tell you why I was wrong. It's because I am way too loyal to people who have helped me out. Like if you went deep, if you went on Rogan and actually explained it,
my biggest regret is that I didn't primary him, and I was going to, and then I didn't at the last minute. That's my biggest regret, is that I didn't do it. Yeah, it's crazy. I agree with you. My initial reaction was to scrunch my face like I smelled something bad, mostly because Gavin Newsom is such a cold-eyed sociopath. Oh, yeah. He'll do anything. He'll literally and he does not care whether or not it makes him look ridiculous. Like he will just say whatever it is that he needs to say at any moment. But you're right. Nobody else is doing it. Nobody else is standing up and saying, and I don't know, maybe there'll be a voice that comes around. I don't know. Do you buy any of the Jon Stewart stuff?
Kind of. I don't buy it seriously. I'm sure what's happening is that people are texting him and like batting it around and saying like, maybe I'd put money behind it, and then leaking that to the press. And so if you're any patriotic American and you have people tripping in your ear being like, listen, the Democratic Party is going to throw itself off a cliff and I don't see anybody else who could rescue it, people actually do take that stuff seriously on a psychological level, even if you're a comedian. So I don't think it's insane or impossible. I think it's very unlikely, but I'm sure that people are being serious behind closed doors about it.
The one person that has danced around it is Stephen A. Smith in this regard. Like he is somebody that has said the thing about Biden. I've said it on this show. If he gets on stage, I don't care what you think about Stephen A. Smith. If he gets on stage with everybody else and you are going to compete with Stephen A. Smith in a live television contest, you're going to lose. He's one of the best that's ever been on live television. He's on live television 20 hours a day on ESPN every single day talking about anything. And then when he's done on his free time, he does a podcast where he's recording himself and his opinions. I don't know. I don't think the DNC would ever let it happen. I think they would find a way to make sure that he is not on the stage. But
But they're also losing gatekeeper power, which is kind of interesting too. So there are different ways this will, I mean, so as you were saying that, I'm looking at my calendar, it's July 2025, and I'm just thinking to myself, 12 years ago, 11 years ago, even to some extent 10 years ago right now, we were having this very conversation about a celebrity named Donald Trump who had played footsie with actually jumping into a political race. And up until he literally won the primary, it was just like, even actually for most people until Hillary Clinton lost, a total fantasy that he was actually going to become president of the United States. So unthinkable. And we were at that point, the idea of him actually crossing the threshold, it feels like, you know, Stephen A. Smith or Jon Stewart now, as crazy as that is to say, because nobody's really Donald Trump, Stephen A. Smith and Jon Stewart are television personalities who have had day in, day out training for their entire professional lives and how to manipulate this medium and use it smartly. So I don't think it's insane at all. And it's not also insane to think that at some point people just decide they're organizing their own debates outside of the official DNC apparatus. And that, I mean, Stephen A. Smith, if you're Beto or you're Andy Bashir and Stephen A. Smith is challenging you to a debate, or Gavin Newsom in a Democratic primary a few years from now, you're going to look ridiculous if you say no just because it's not sanctioned by the DNC.
Well, this is my thing. I think the DNC should do it. The RNC should do it. Stop doing these gigantic debates weekly. Just have a media partner and then have randomly draw 3 at a time. And then just every night at the Thursday at 7, 3 of the people are going to go debate, and it's going to be an official thing. And then you whittle it down, you whittle it down, you whittle it down. And then eventually you have them there, because these car crash debates are just so insane to watch. But to your point, and this, we can go back to the monoculture, part of what the Republicans now have better than the Democrats, but the Democrats are suffering for, is that there's nobody that they allow to not toe the orthodoxy. Maybe the Republicans are going back here with Trump, but Trump's worldview is so Swiss cheese, you know, things, there's room for a Mitch McConnell and a Marjorie Taylor Greene in the Republican Party right now. Who knows if that's going to be the case going forward. But the Democrats, the reason why a Jon Stewart or a Stephen A. Smith looks interesting is literally just the thirst for a blank slate. Just the thirst for somebody that is not around this machine that has clearly lost its way, that has clearly lost its connection with the core coalition that elects it.
It's so important, because it's also why this is a dangerous and I would say exciting time for Democrats, is that their voters are desperate. They haven't realized it. And that's how you end up with Zohran Mamdani in New York City, in part. I mean, it's not the full explanation, but that's why you can get a whole lot of people. There were man on the street interviews happening with voters in New York who are like, no, I don't like socialism, but I'm voting for that guy because A, he's better than Cuomo. B, all he's talking about is helping me afford my rent. So it's like there's just a desperation in the Democratic base that feels to me like what Republicans failed to notice in the Tea Party base until Rick Santelli went on CNBC one day and just launched this movement. Anyone in the Republican Party, if they had been critical of the Republican Party in a sincere, authentic, and impassioned way that reflected and matched the anger of the base, could have done that at any point. It didn't have to be Rick Santelli. But that's, you know, what sent John McCain into a frenzy, and Republican leadership, Mitch McConnell at the time, into a frenzy. They let it happen. They had nobody but themselves to blame. And that's the situation Democrats are in right now.
Yeah, the Zohran thing, which, you know, the news today is that Cuomo's going to stay in the race. He's shooting an ad, you know, 12 hours ago or something. But it's like, that is, you want the Democratic Party in a nutshell. Go back before the Zohran thing. It's like the meme of the guy with the little domino and then there's the gigantic domino. So it starts off. It starts with Eric Adams, a fairly popular New York City mayor that is more to the center of de Blasio, as a reaction to de Blasio, because that's what the city wanted, criticizing Biden for the migrant problem that he was having in New York City. And instead of settling that in the party, now all of a sudden Eric Adams is rung up on charges. He's persona non grata. And now he tilts right and he starts looking, because he's his own creature. Like he's now looking to Trump for help. And so now he's split with the base. So instead of the Democratic Party post Biden saying, hey, Let's rehabilitate Eric Adams. Let's make sure that we got a good thing going here. He might not be perfect, but we'll figure it out. No, instead, Cuomo, of all people, Cuomo steps in, sleepwalks through this primary, totally blows a 60-point lead. And now Zoran's there and they're like, how did this happen to us? How on earth did we get into this situation? It's like this protectionist mindset from them has done nothing but wreak problems. And it goes again to the idea that this was the Biden thing from the very beginning. Zoran is Biden's fault.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, because let's even get more specific to what you just said. Why did the Biden administration cling to a failing immigration policy for years and years that put Eric Adams in that situation that infuriated their own voters? I get that there was a niche element of progressives like Zoran Mamdani himself, DSA types in New York City, who were saying that it was racist to have an immigration policy that was, let's just say, a little bit more moderate, not to the degree that the Biden administration had it, because there was backlash to Trumpism in his first term. So let's just, but if you are a voter in a blue city and you are experiencing what people in New York experience, what people here in DC experience, probably what Austin experiences to some degree, or San Francisco or Los Angeles, you are going to blame Democrats for that. And Democrats did not figure that out until 8 million, according to David Leonhardt of the New York Times, a net of 8 million new people had already come in and crowded these cities and made Democrats look insane. And they clung to it because they don't have their finger on the pulse.
Yeah, I still don't know how things spun out like that. I mean, there's still just more. There's more to the Biden story that I feel like, I liked Original Sin. I didn't think that it confused me that Jake Tapper wrote his name on the top of the book, but I otherwise enjoyed it. Although I did read the audiobook, and Jake Tapper does read the audiobook and does Biden impressions in the audiobook. That is that is probably worthwhile for people Tapper, who are into that.
He's Newsom-esque, right? Like he's one of those people you can always tell he's smart enough to know where the winds are blowing, but he's not quite, I think, brave enough and principled enough to put on to actually do it well, right? To follow the winds well.
Well, I don't, speaking of CNN, it's like, I think that I think Tapper realized that when he starts his Substack, he wants it to not only appeal to people that are currently watching his show. Mm-hmm. And he needed to figure out a new way to do that, because looking at the way that David Zaslav runs Warner Brothers, I don't think that a lot of these big contracts are getting renewed, especially when you look at the money that's coming in there. So,
and they're looking at what's happening at MSNBC right now. And CNN pulled the plug on CNN Plus, which my hottest take in media is that CNN Plus was perfectly defensible and is actually what they should have. They did it in the dumbest possible way. And I believe they had the help of McKinsey in it. But that was a really, really important hedge. And they blew so much money and ended up with absolutely nothing. And now Fox Nation is really something that it's almost like a new foundation. It's partially like a repaired foundation for Fox News in this new media environment. And CNN and MSNBC basically have nothing. They're working from the ground up. And they're going to how can you afford Anderson Cooper when you're CNN in 10 years? I don't know.
I mean, I think there's a lot. We have a big shoe to drop in the media world, and look, your boss there with Megyn Kelly Media was, certainly I don't think that her exit out of mainstream media would have been the way that she would have written it at the time, but the timing of when she began to build her own shingle was perfect. It was where and when it needed to be. Not to say that nobody could do it now, but you would need to be a certain kind of person. I don't think a lot of those personalities are the hustlers that you need to be on these internet streets, because there is nothing handed to you, and whatever mainstream media fame that you had is not guaranteed to last.
And that'll wrap it up for us today. I would like to thank Emily Jashinsky, whose name, for whatever reason, I cannot say without sounding like I'm drunk. Dana Carvey had a whole bit about how you can't say judicial system without sounding like you've had 3 during lunch. I cannot say Emily Jashinsky without sounding like I'm slurring. Anyway, we had some technical difficulties at the end of that interview, so it ended without me thanking her for being on. Thank you very much, Emily. Hopefully this is not the last time that she is on the show. Do me a favor. We got 2 new guests this week, PX3 Faithful. If you enjoyed them, please make them feel welcome. Go find them on social media and say, I loved hearing you on PX3. There is nothing that fills the ego bucket of us lonely media figures like strangers saying, I heard you for the first time and I really liked you. And besides, these are good opportunities. I like gathering friends. You know, we like having good online friends for which we have a good rapport with. Our producer is Will Saddleberg. You can send me an email, theyoungamerican@gmail.com. Find short clips of this show, Justin R. Young on TikTok, Justin R. Young on X, and on YouTube, where you get the full video experience. Politics is where you go for that. You can support us with a one-time donation, paypal.me/payjury, PAYJURY. Venmo is Justin-Young-20, and PX3 Cash is where you go if you have the Cash app. You can send me anything you'd like in the mail. Post Office Box 153184, Austin, Texas 78715. Thank you to Lucas for sending a very funny postcard this week. The only place you get our bonus content is TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Paying members get 2 bonus episodes each and every week, either $3 a week or $99 for the entire year. And at that annual rate, man, that's 150 episodes of PX3 for under $100. Mwah, 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 chef's kiss. This is a bargain, my friends.
But of course, the only people who get their name read at the end of the show are your founding tier. Sonny Black, L3PO, Peepaw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Sarah Jeannie, Jeremy, Pro Idiot, Chiller Tomatoes. Oh yeah, it's Adam, Neil, AB Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Michael, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Will, The Borge B, Matthew, Matt, Andrew, Edwin, Sam, Andrew, Phil, Edison, Devon, Paul, a dog named Checkers, Gloria, my mom, Jerry, Trucker, John, Berkeley, Steven, and Zombie Doc. You want your name read on the show. One place to do it, TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Till then, this is your old pal, Justin Robert Young, saying some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, still more discuss politics, but this, baby, this is the only show that dares discuss all 3.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Dog and Pony Show audio.